Hey, it's Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm, and today we're going to learn how to make a bench cushion for your outside benches. First thing we need to do is measure our benches. This particular bench, I'm only going to be making a cushion for the bottom part. So I need to measure the length, and it's going to be 38, and the width is going to be 16. So 16 by 38 is what we're going to want to have for our cushion. Thank you. Thank you, Rocco. Now you're here? Oh, now I got two of them? Seriously? You guys! I'm gonna have to speed this up. Okay, I'm using the sponge topper that I bought. I bought a twin size since I have two benches here, and then I wanted to do a double cushion for the swing out at the homestead. So the most economical way to purchase the amount of sponge I needed was to buy a twin size bed topper for, I think it was $18.99 on Amazon. As you see, if this was on a bed, if this is the bed topper, I would be most disappointed with the quality and the thickness of this topper. But because I'm only using this for cushions, I really didn't care. Before you go invest in sponge at a fabric store, check your alternative sources. This is the same kind of sponge you're going to get minus the egg crate type back here. It's not going to matter if that's against the seat. You're going to sit on this flat part anyway. So I don't have to do a seam on one side of the cushion. I have just folded my fabric, and I'm using this waterproof, like indoor-outdoor fabric. I went ahead and cut my sponge to 38 inches lengthwise and 16 wide. I'm going to double check those measurements. I have not cut the fabric yet, and that is because we want to put our foam or our sponge on the fabric so we can allow enough for the thickness in addition to allowing enough for the seam allowance. So on the fabric, this sponge is not thick. It's about an inch to an inch and a fourth in the thickest place. So I really only need to figure an inch. So I'm going to cut my fabric at about 39.5 inches. The width, if you're going to err, it's better to err on the excess, because if you think about it, when you sit, the tension will be right back in the front where your legs sort of hit the edge of the seat. So that's where it's going to bear the most weight. So that's where I'm going to put my folded fabric, so there's no seam there, so it's stronger. If I have a seam there, eventually my stitches are going to start to pull. They might tear or pop. So by putting that folded fabric in the front, I avoid a seam, and I'm going to make my cushion stronger. So I'm going to cut my fabric 18 inches wide, and that's going to give me 2 inches. So this is what we're dealing with, and then we also need to cut. So obviously your cushion may have different dimensions than mine. I'm just doing it from, like, I measured the bench so you can watch what I'm doing. The ties are going to be basically the same though, no matter what size bench you have. I did 2 inches wide by 20 inches long, and I folded them in half, and I just zigzagged the edges. Because these are going to be attached, we're going to sew them inside the seam to the back seam of the cushion, and then these are going to wrap around behind the chair and tie. So you're going to need 2 ties. If you were doing a top, you would do the same thing, but you're going to be making 4 ties because you'll want to put them at each corner for a back. If you're making a back cushion. Excuse my messy sewing table. I'm in the middle of a big doll project. We're making like 4 different dolls. Well, actually, they're all the same doll, but I'm doing wardrobes for all those dolls in a trunk, and they look like old China dolls, but they're actually a resin. 4 of them, 4 sets, so I've got piled high. Plus, on top of that, while I was doing all that sewing, I had some actual doll clothes for my dolls that I had cut out and decided to throw on the pile. So it's quite crazy, I guess is a good word, what's going on here. So sort of trying to sew around all of that. So I've folded my fabric inside out here. We're going to start on the corner. You may need a heavy duty needle. I already have like just a medium. This fabric isn't really thick, so I just have like a medium needle on here, and I'm going to be sewing it just like you would a regular pillow and turning it inside out. So let me get it going here. I'm just going to be doing a straight stitch with about a half an inch seam allowance. I'm going to just go do this. I'm just going to do the one end, come down to the end, and then we're going to put the tie on. Alright, now I want to take one of my ties. I'm going to fold it in half like this, and I'm going to squish down the end. And I want to just insert that inside. And I want to shove it against that seam. Where my little pokey sticks went to. I'm going to just sew over it. So on the inside, it'll have 2 pieces so I can tie that to the back of the bench. Now for added strength, I'm just going to go back over that and back over, and I'm going to go, when I get ready to close the whole thing, I'm going to go back over it with a zigzag just for added strength. So I'm going to go all the way down to this next end. Because I am going to be turning it inside out to put the cushion in before I close that end, I want to stop here right before I get to the end. I'm going to fold my second tie in half. I'm going to stick that in here. I want to, sorry about all the jostling, I'm trying not to hit the camera because I have this pile of doll clothes right next to it, and I didn't want to move everything because it just seemed like a lot to move everything. I'm going to switch to a zigzag, and I'm just going to zigzag right next to that seam just for stress, to give some added protection against the stress of sitting on the seat. That way, if the first seam was to pop, you would have a backup seam there and it wouldn't just rip out. I'm also going to go back and forth a couple couple times on the tie. Get a little bit of extra there, and then down my end. Right side out. Use my finger. I'm going to poke down in those ends, make sure I get them all poked out. I'm trying to stay off camera. Last night while cooking dinner, I sliced through my finger, and so I had to go to the ER. It was real fun. So I just didn't feel like doing the whole makeup thing today. So here you can see both the ends with the ties on it. And sometimes the best way to get your, I also have to make sure that to fold your foam with your sponge. And you want to make sure, if you do what I did and bought the cheap stuff with the bumpy side, you got to make sure you get that the right side of that's going to be down, so your ties are against the back. Okay, sometimes just folding it in half, slipping it in there is the fastest way than trying to shove it in there, and you saw how fast that was when I just did that. To close it, I'm going to fold one end in. Put it together. And since this is not actual fabric, it's more of a canvas-like waterproof thing, I'm just doing a lot of pushing and creasing. Okay, have it pinned. I'm going to go over there and we're going to sew this end shut. Just the straight stitch, but I feel like it's going to last longer if I go ahead and do a zigzag on the outside. Now some people don't like this because the zigzag will show, but I'm using thread that's pretty close to the colors of the actual fabric, so I would rather the zigzag show and it lasts a little longer. I tied the ties on to the ends, and there's the cushion. I think the colors are nice and bright and cheery, especially against that black. And if you're, like I said, if you're making one for the back, you do the same thing, except for you're going to want to put ties in all four corners in order to tie. So this has really been a simple project, and I hope you're able to use this to add some updated decor to your outside furniture. This is Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm. Thanks for joining us. Bye.